I saw my mother, Eleanor, smile that day, a wide, dazzling grin that crinkled the corners of her eyes. It was the kind of smile you save for your proudest moments, for milestones you've worked years to achieve. Only that smile wasn't for me. It was for a diamond necklace, glittering under the harsh fluorescent lights of a Beverly Hills jewelry store, a necklace that cost more than I made in 2 years. And as she admired it, I couldn't help but wonder, did she even remember the promise she made to me, the one that necklace had just shattered into 1,000 pieces? The air in the upscale boutique felt thin, suffocating, as if all the oxygen had been sucked out by the sheer expense of everything around us. My sister, Bethany, clapped her hands together, a high-pitched sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, Mom, it's perfect. It'll go wonderfully with the gown." Her voice, usually so sweet and innocent, now felt like a dagger twisting in my gut. Perfect for what I wanted to scream, for burying my dreams. Perfect for showing everyone where your true priorities lie. My dad, Richard, stood beside them, a benign, almost oblivious look on his face. He nodded along, murmuring affirmations, as if this whole spectacle was just another Tuesday. He didn't see the silent scream in my eyes, the tremor in my hands, or the way my heart was breaking into irreparable fragments. He was too busy being the dutiful husband, the doting father, to Bethany, that is. To me, he was just another player in this grand, cruel heist of my future. I walked out of the store, the chime of the door a funeral bell for my aspirations. The California sun, usually so warm and inviting, now felt like a spotlight on my humiliation. How could they do this? How could they stand there, basking in the glow of such extravagant materialism, when they knew the truth? They knew what that money was supposed to be for. They knew the sacrifices I had made, the dreams I had carefully nurtured since I was a little girl. My name is Charlotte Wright. I'm 26 years old, and once upon a time, I believed in family, in promises, in the idea that some bonds were unbreakable. I was naive, wasn't I? I thought my parents, Eleanor and Richard, loved me just as much as they loved my older sister, Bethany. I thought we were a unit, a team. But that day, in that ridiculously expensive jewelry store, the illusion shattered, revealing the ugly truth beneath. I was always second best. 4 years I'd scrimped and saved, working 2 jobs through high school and college, dreaming of grad school. My parents had promised to help, to match my savings, to make sure I had the best shot at becoming a veterinarian. It was a verbal agreement, yes, but felt as solid as a signed contract. They'd always said, "Charlotte, your education is your future. We'll make sure you get there." Those words, once a comforting lullaby, now echoed in my mind like a mocking laugh. But then Bethany got engaged. And suddenly, future took on a whole new meaning for my parents. Her wedding became their Everest, a mountain of silk, flowers, and caviar that had to be conquered, no matter the cost. My college fund, the modest nest egg I'd so painstakingly built, became just another line item in their ever-growing wedding budget. "It's just for a little while, honey," my mom had said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "We'll pay you back. We promise." A promise, I've learned, can be as flimsy as a spider's web when it stands in the way of someone else's desires. They drained my account, every single penny, to pay for Bethany's designer dress, the lavish reception, and now, that monstrous diamond necklace for my mother to wear. My dreams of veterinary school, of helping animals, of building a life I could be proud of, vanished into thin air, replaced by the bitter taste of betrayal. This isn't just a story about money. It's about a family torn apart by a devastating choice, about a daughter's heartbreak turning into a burning desire for justice. If you've ever felt overlooked, cheated, or had your trust shattered, then this story is for you. Stay with me because what happens next will shock you to your core. You won't believe the lengths I went to get back what was mine. Please, if you're watching this, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. It truly helps me share these raw, emotional stories that need to be heard. And tell me, where are you watching from? Comment your city and state below. I promise if you do, a positive change will come to you and your family this week. Trust me, karma has a funny way of working. Now, picture this. As I stood on that sidewalk, the sun beating down, I pulled out my phone. My parents thought they had gotten away with it, that their little loan would be forgotten in the whirlwind of wedding festivities. But they severely underestimated Charlotte Wright. Because that day, I wasn't just walking away from a jewelry store. I was walking towards a plan, a carefully crafted strategy for something far more significant than a mere refund. And the first step involved a discreet phone call, a hushed conversation with someone I hadn't spoken to in years, someone who held a very specific, very dangerous key to their perfect world. The voice that answered the phone was rough, like gravel rattling in a tin can. A voice I hadn't heard in 10 years. "Leo," I whispered, my own voice trembling as I stood on that sunny street. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Charlotte, is that really you?" It was my Uncle Leo, my dad's younger brother, the one our family pretended didn't exist. He was my secret weapon, the one person who knew all the skeletons in my father's closet. Because, once upon a time, he had helped put them there. I remember when I was 10, Uncle Leo would visit every Sunday. He was the fun one. While my dad taught me about saving money, Uncle Leo taught me how to build a treehouse and how to properly bandage a squirrel's hurt leg. He bought me my first real science kit and told me I was smart enough to be anything I wanted. He was the first person I ever told about wanting to be a veterinarian. He looked at me with a serious face and said, "Charlie, you never let anyone tell you your dream is too big." Then one day he was just gone. "He did what?" Leo's voice crackled with anger as I told him everything. I explained how they smiled while they took my future, how they spent my college savings on a wedding and a diamond necklace. I cried, and for the first time in a long time someone just listened. He didn't tell me I was overreacting. He didn't tell me to forgive them. He just said, "Your father hasn't changed a bit. Okay, Charlie, I'll help you. But you need to understand, once we start this, there's no going back." "Are you sure you're ready for that?" Was I ready? I thought of my sister, Bethany, trying on her $5,000 wedding dress, paid for with my hard work. I thought of my mother's happy smile as she bought jewelry with money that was meant for my school books. My sadness was hardening into something cold and sharp like ice. "I'm ready," I said, my voice firm. Leo sighed. "Good. Because your father has something hidden. Something your mother doesn't even know about. It's a safety deposit box, and it holds the key to getting your money back, and then some. What would you do if you were me? Would you listen to your uncle, the one your family threw away? Or would you just let your parents ruin your dreams?" I had to think back to why Leo left. I was 12, hiding at the top of the stairs. My father and Leo were shouting. The words were about their business, a small construction company they built together. Dad was screaming about missing money, calling Leo a thief. Leo's voice was full of hurt, saying Dad had set him up, that he was greedy. My mom just stood there, siding with my dad. Leo walked out that night and never came back. Now on the phone, Leo's voice was low and serious. "The business made a lot of money, Charlie. Before your dad pushed me out, we made a special account for emergencies. We set it up to need 2 keys to open the box it's in. Your father has 1 key. And I have the other." My breath caught in my throat. A secret account. 2 keys. This was bigger than I ever imagined. The open loop of my family's past was suddenly becoming a path to my future. How could I not follow it? "What's in the box, Leo?" I asked, my heart pounding like a drum. "Enough," he said simply. "Enough to pay for your school 10 times over. It was our secret retirement fund." My father had a secret retirement fund he'd kept hidden for over a decade, even from my mother, while he was stealing from his own daughter. The betrayal felt like a physical blow, knocking all the air out of my lungs. They weren't just careless with my future. They had actively chosen to destroy it while sitting on a pile of secret money. My resolve was no longer just ice. It was steel. "What do I have to do?" I asked. Leo told me the plan. My father, a man of habit, kept his key hidden in the same place he'd kept it for 15 years. In a small, secret compartment inside his old wooden desk in his home office. "He's arrogant, Charlie," Leo warned. He thinks no one would ever dare to go through his things. He thinks I'm long gone and you're too weak to fight back. You have to prove him wrong. The challenge was clear. I had to get that key. But how? The house was a fortress of wedding planning. My mom, my sister, and a parade of florists and caterers were always there. Getting into my father's office alone would be nearly impossible. Felt like a spy movie, but this was my real life. The risk was huge. If I got caught, I wouldn't just lose my money. I would lose my family forever, whatever was left of it. But if I didn't do this, I would lose myself. That evening, I crept back into the house. Laughter floated from the dining room where my mom and Bethany were looking at pictures of wedding cakes. They didn't even notice me. I slipped down the hall toward my father's office. The door was slightly ajar. I could hear his voice inside, low and urgent on the phone. I leaned closer, holding my breath. "Don't worry, the final payment will be made next week," he said. "She'll never find out. As far as Charlotte knows, the money is just gone." A cold chill washed over me as he said the next words. Besides, her education was never going to be as important as Bethany's happiness. His words hit me harder than a slap. Her education was never going to be as important as Bethany's happiness. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about my worth. In my father's eyes, I was simply less important. The sadness I felt on the street outside the jewelry store was gone, burned away by a white-hot anger that filled my whole body. They hadn't just stolen my savings. They had told me in no uncertain terms that my dreams didn't matter. And I decided right then and there, hiding in the shadows of the hallway, that I would make them matter. I backed away from the office door silently, my mind racing. I couldn't just wait for him to leave. I needed a distraction, something big enough to get my mother and sister completely out of the house, and my father away from his desk. The wedding. It had been the source of all my pain, and now it would be my greatest tool. They were obsessed with every tiny detail, which meant any problem, no matter how small, would feel like a huge emergency. I slipped into my old bedroom and pulled out my phone. I used a special app, one that could make my call look like it was coming from a different number. I chose the number for the Grand Oak, Bethany's ridiculously expensive wedding venue. I took a deep breath, made my voice sound a little frantic and professional, and dialed our home line. My mother picked up on the second ring. "Hello," she answered. "Good evening," I said quickly. "This is Maria from the Grand Oak. I'm so sorry to call, but we have a major issue with your booking. It seems we have you down for the wrong date." The shriek on the other end of the line was exactly what I had hoped for. "The wrong date? That's impossible," my mother yelled. I could hear Bethany start to cry in the background. I continued my story, saying the computer system had a glitch and they needed to come down immediately with their contract to sort it out before the date was given to another couple. It was a complete lie, of course, but their panic made it real. My father, hearing the commotion, came out of his office. "Eleanor, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice laced with annoyance. 10 minutes later, I watched from my window as my father's car sped down the street, my mother and a sobbing Bethany in the passenger seats. He was furious he had to leave his work, but he was more afraid of his wife's anger if the wedding was ruined. The house was finally empty. It was silent. My heart was beating so fast it felt like a bird trapped in my chest. This was it. My one chance. I walked down the hallway, the floorboards creaking under my feet, and pushed open the door to my father's office. The room smelled of leather and old paper. The huge wooden desk sat in the middle of the room like a sleeping monster. This was the desk my father worked at every night, the place where he signed the checks that paid for Bethany's wedding with my money. I felt a surge of anger and started pulling open the drawers. Papers, pens, boring-looking files. Nothing. I looked everywhere. Under the blotter, inside the pencil holders. The key was nowhere. A cold fear began to creep in. What if I was wrong? What if Leo was wrong? Then his words came back to me. "He's arrogant," Leo had said. "He thinks no one would ever dare." My father wouldn't hide the key somewhere clever. He would hide it somewhere he thought was safe, somewhere that represented his own power. My eyes landed on the bookshelf behind his desk. It was filled with thick, boring books about business and money. But one book stood out. It was his first ever accounting textbook from college, the one he always pointed to when he talked about how he built his success from nothing. I pulled the heavy book from the shelf, felt strangely light. I opened the cover, and my breath caught in my throat. The pages had been hollowed out, and nestled inside, on a bed of faded paper, was a small, old-fashioned silver key. It was real. Everything Leo said was real. Had it. Actually had it. I was just about to close the book when I heard the sound of the front door opening. I forgot my purse. It was my mother's voice. Her footsteps were coming down the hall, straight toward the office. There was no time to run, no time to hide properly. I did the only thing I could think of. I dove under the massive desk, pulling my legs in and praying she wouldn't see me. I held the key so tightly in my hand that its edges dug into my palm. The office door swung open. I could see my mother's shoes, just inches from my face. She walked over to the chair, picked up her purse and sighed. "This wedding will be the death of me," she muttered to herself, and then she walked out, closing the door behind her. I stayed under the desk for a full minute, my body shaking, not daring to breathe. When I finally crawled out, my relief was so great I felt dizzy. I carefully placed the textbook back on the shelf. But as I pushed it into place, it knocked another thin folder that had been hidden behind it. It fell to the floor with a soft thud. Picked it up. It wasn't a business file. It was a simple manila folder, and written on the tab in my father's neat handwriting were 3 words that made my blood run cold. Leo, final settlement. What did that mean? What settlement? I thought Leo had just been pushed out. I opened the folder, and what I saw inside changed everything I thought I knew about my family, and about the man I called my father. My hands trembled as I held the thin folder. Leo, final settlement. The words felt cold, final, like a tombstone. This wasn't just a file. It was a buried piece of our family's history, a secret my father had kept locked away in the dark. I had come for a key, but I had stumbled upon a ghost. With the sound of my own heart echoing in the silent house, I slid my finger under the flap and opened it. What kind of monster was my father? And what had he done to the only person who ever believed in me? Inside, there wasn't a simple business agreement. The first thing I saw was a photograph, faded and curled at the edges. It was of my dad and Leo, looking young and happy, leaning against an old work truck. They had their arms around each other, grinning from ear to ear. They looked like brothers, like partners. Behind the photo was a stack of papers, held together by a rusty paperclip. The top page was a legal document, full of words I didn't understand. But I saw Leo's signature at the bottom, shaky and thin, next to my father's, which was bold and confident. I scanned the document, my eyes catching on certain phrases. Non-disclosure agreement. Forfeit of all company shares. Agreement to cease all contact. And then the line that made my stomach drop. In exchange for Richard Wright not pursuing criminal charges for embezzlement. My father hadn't just pushed Leo out of the business. He had accused him of being a criminal. He had threatened his own brother with jail time, forcing him to sign away his life's work and disappear forever. The happy men in the photograph were gone, replaced by a villain and a victim. But it got worse. Tucked at the back was a single bank statement. It showed a transfer of $25,000 from the company account to Leo's personal account, dated the day he left. I remembered that day clearly. My father had stormed around the house for weeks, telling my mother that Leo had robbed them blind, that he'd stolen over $100,000. But this paper proved it was a lie. He had created a false trail, a fake reason to destroy his brother, all for a measly $25,000. Why? What could possibly be worth that kind of betrayal? Just as that question burned in my mind, I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. They were back. Panic seized me, cold and sharp. They couldn't find me here. They couldn't know I had been in this room. My mind raced. I had to put everything back, exactly as I had found it. But I couldn't leave this proof behind. Acting on pure instinct, I pulled out my phone and quickly snapped a photo of the main agreement and the bank statement. My hands were shaking so badly the first picture was blurry. I shoved the papers back into the folder, my fingers clumsy with fear. I slid the folder back behind the textbook, then pushed the book perfectly into its place on the shelf. I could hear their voices now, angry and confused, coming through the front door. "I'm telling you, Richard, she said there was a problem," my mother was saying. I didn't have time to use the hallway. I looked at the window behind the desk. It was my only way out. I slid it open, slipped out into the bushes in the backyard, and ran. I didn't stop running until I was in my car and halfway down the street. My whole body was shaking. The key was a hard lump in my pocket, but the secret in that folder felt 100 times heavier. I pulled over to the side of the road, under the shade of a large oak tree, and dialed Leo's number. He answered on the first ring. "Did you get it, Charlie?" he asked, his voice full of hope. "I got it," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "But Leo found something else. Found a folder. It was about you. About a final settlement." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. It was a heavy, painful silence that told me everything I needed to know. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with a sadness so deep it broke my heart. "I never wanted you to see that," he said softly. "Your father. He told me he burned it." He took a shaky breath. "He framed me, Charlie. I never stole a penny. There was a bad investment, one that he made, that lost almost everything. He was too proud to admit he failed, so he needed someone to blame. He chose me." The world tilted on its axis. My father, the man who lectured me about responsibility and honesty, was a liar and a coward. He had ruined his own brother's life to protect his pride. This was so much bigger than my college fund. This was about a lifetime of deception. This was about justice. A new kind of strength, cold and clear, washed over me. "He's not going to get away with it, Leo," I said, my voice now steady and hard. "This isn't just about my money anymore. We're going to take back everything he stole. From both of us." Leo was quiet for a moment. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. "Okay, Charlie," he said, and I could hear the determination returning to his voice. "Okay. But you need to be very, very careful. Your father is more dangerous than you can imagine." He paused, and his next words sent a shiver down my spine. "The secret in that safety deposit box isn't just about the money he hid from me. It's proof of who he really is. And I think it has something to do with Bethany's fiancé and his family." Bethany's fiancé. Preston Sterling. The name echoed in my mind, a name that always meant perfection. The Sterlings were like royalty in our town, with old money that went back generations. Preston was handsome, charming, and he treated Bethany like a princess. Their marriage was supposed to be a fairy tale. But Leo's words painted a dark cloud over that perfect picture. What could my father possibly have on the Sterling family? And why would he hide it in a box with the money he stole from his own brother? Felt like I had one piece of a puzzle and Leo had the other. I met Leo at a small, quiet diner an hour later, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and the smell of old coffee in the air. When he walked in, I barely recognized him. 10 years had added deep lines to his face, and his hair was more gray than brown. He looked tired, worn down by a life I couldn't imagine. But when his eyes met mine, I saw the same kindness I remembered as a child, the same spark of rebellion. He slid into the booth opposite me, a sad smile on his face. "You look just like your grandmother," he said, his voice raspy. I placed the small silver key on the table between us. It looked insignificant, but it felt like a bomb waiting to go off. Leo stared at it for a moment, then reached into his own pocket and pulled out its twin. He placed his key next to mine. 2 keys, separated for over a decade, now reunited. "He never changed the lock," Leo murmured, shaking his head. "So arrogant. He probably thought I threw this away years ago." His eyes looked back up at me, and they were filled with a deep, painful regret. "I'm sorry, Charlie. I should have fought him. I shouldn't have left you there with them." "You didn't have a choice," I whispered, pushing the picture of the settlement agreement on my phone across the table. His face hardened as he looked at the proof of his betrayal. "He told me if I ever came back, if I ever tried to contact you or your mom, he'd make sure I spent the rest of my life in a prison cell." He looked away out the window. "I was a coward. But what he did to you, taking your future, that's a line even I didn't think he'd cross. What kind of man threatens his own family with prison? What other lines had my father crossed?" We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of a broken family hanging between us. Then I asked the question that had been screaming in my mind. "Leo, what did you mean about Preston's family?" Leo leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low whisper. "Years ago, before your father kicked me out, he was trying to get a deal with Sterling Sr., Preston's dad. Sterling is a powerful man, but he's careful. He turned your father down. Said his books weren't clean. Your dad was furious, obsessed with proving him wrong, with getting into their inner circle. So what changed?" Yes. "Why are they letting Bethany marry into their family now?" Leo shook his head. "That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? My guess is your father found something. Some dirt on the Sterling family, so powerful, so damaging, that they were forced to accept the marriage proposal. This wedding isn't about love, Charlie. It's blackmail. And whatever proof your father has, I'm willing to bet it's in that box, right next to our money." The diner suddenly felt cold. This perfect wedding was built on a foundation of lies and threats. We made a plan. The bank was downtown. We would go the next morning as soon as it opened. We would walk in together, use our 2 keys, and take back what was ours. It was simple, but it felt terrifying. We were about to walk into the lion's den. As Leo was explaining the layout of the bank, my phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from my dad. My blood ran cold. The message was short, but it felt like a punch to the gut. "Charlotte, we need to talk." I noticed my office was disturbed. "Call me immediately." Did he know? Was this a trap? I showed the message to Leo, my hand shaking. He read it, his expression grim. "It's a bluff," he said, though he didn't sound entirely sure. "He's fishing. He doesn't know for sure that it was you. Don't respond. Don't do anything. We stick to the plan. We go tomorrow morning. Now, more than ever, we have to." His attempt to reassure me did little to calm the storm of fear inside me. My own father was hunting me. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on my bed, staring at the key in my palm. This small piece of metal held the key to my future, but also to a past so dark I was afraid of what it would reveal. My whole life, I had seen my father as a strong, successful man. But now, all I could see was a monster who framed his own brother and blackmailed a powerful family for status. What else was he capable of? Was I doing the right thing, or was I about to destroy everyone around me, including myself? Just as I was about to turn off my light, my phone buzzed again. It wasn't my dad this time. It was an unknown number. There was no greeting, no name, just one terrifying sentence that made the hair on my arms stand up. The message read, "Be careful at the bank. The safety deposit box is alarmed to notify a third party. Not the police, and not your father." Who was this? Who else was watching? And who was this mysterious third party my father trusted more than the police? The message glowed on my phone screen, a single sentence that froze the air in my lungs. "The safety deposit box is alarmed to notify a third party." Who could have sent this? It was like a ghost was watching my every move, a silent guardian or a hidden enemy. I couldn't tell which. My plan, which had felt so clear just moments before, was now a dark and tangled mess. This wasn't just about my father anymore. There was another player in this game, someone who operated in the shadows. And we were about to walk right into their line of sight. I immediately called Leo, my voice a frantic whisper. "Leo, someone knows. Someone sent me a text, warning me about the box." I read him the message, the words tasting like poison in my mouth. For a long moment there was only static on the line. I could picture him, running a hand over his tired face, the weight of the past and the fear of the future crashing down on him. Who, Charlie? Who else could possibly know about this? He finally asked, his voice strained. Had no answer. Was this a trap set by my father? Or a warning from someone trying to help? We had a choice to make, and we had to make it fast. We could turn back, let the secrets stay buried, and let my father win. Or we could walk forward into a trap we couldn't see, for a chance at justice. It changes nothing, Leo said, his voice suddenly hard as stone. If anything, it proves we're on the right path. It proves there's something in that box so important that he needed a secret watchdog to protect it. We're going. We finish this. His courage gave me strength. We were two broken people, but together we were an army. The next morning, the city bank stood before us like a stone fortress. Every window looked like an eye, watching us. Walking through the revolving doors felt like crossing a border into another country, a land of cold marble and colder stairs. My heart hammered against my ribs with every step we took towards the vault. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see someone following us, expecting a hand to grab my arm. Leo walked beside me, his face a mask of calm, but I could see the tension in his jaw. We were in the lion's den now. A stern-looking woman led us into the vault. The air was cold and still, and the silence was broken only by the loud, echoing click of the massive steel door swinging shut behind us. It locked us in with rows and rows of identical metal boxes, each one holding 1,000 secrets. Box 317, Leo said, his voice steady. The woman led us to a small drawer, her heels clicking on the polished floor. She checked our IDs, then nodded. You will need both keys inserted at the same time, she instructed, her voice flat and uninterested. We stood before the box. Leo looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. Are you ready? I nodded, my throat too dry to speak. Together we pushed our keys into the two locks. There was a loud, satisfying clunk as the mechanism turned. The little door popped open. It was real. After all these years of lies and secrets, the truth was right here, in a simple metal box. The woman handed it to us. It was heavier than I expected. The private viewing room is just down the hall, she said, before turning and leaving us alone. We walked into the small, windowless room and closed the door. It was just us, the box, and a decade of betrayal. Leo placed it on the small table and slowly lifted the lid. I held my breath. I expected to see stacks of cash, but that wasn't what was on top. Instead, there was a thick, brown envelope with a single word written on it in my father's handwriting. Insurance. My hand shook as I reached for it. What kind of insurance did my father need? And who was he protecting himself from? Inside the envelope were not legal papers, but a set of medical records. The name at the top of the page made my vision blur. Preston Sterling Sr. It wasn't just a checkup report. It was a detailed psychiatric evaluation from over 30 years ago. I scanned the pages, reading words like intermittent explosive disorder, pathological lying, and severe narcissistic tendencies. The report detailed a violent incident, an assault that had been covered up and hidden from public record. My father hadn't found some business dirt. He had found proof that the head of the Sterling family was a violent, unstable man. This was the blackmail. This was the key to my sister's fairy tale wedding. Bethany wasn't marrying into a perfect family. She was being used as a bargaining chip, a shield to protect a dark and dangerous secret. This was a cage, not a marriage. My father would stoop this low, risk his own daughter's happiness, just to be connected to a powerful name. The pure evil of it all made me feel sick to my stomach. My father wasn't just a thief and a liar. He was a monster. Just as this horrifying reality was sinking in, I saw it. Tucked beneath the medical records was another, smaller envelope. It was sealed with wax, and there was no name on it. There was just a date from 2 weeks ago. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. This was new. This had been added recently. I broke the seal and pulled out a single photograph. It wasn't of the Sterlings. It wasn't about the business. It was a picture of a newborn baby, wrapped in a pink hospital blanket. On the back, a handwritten note read, "You have a sister you never knew about. He's been paying for her too." That exact moment we heard a soft click. The doorknob to our private room was slowly turning. The doorknob turned with a click that sounded as loud as a gunshot in the silent room. My heart leaped into my throat. Leo moved to stand in front of me, shielding me from whatever was coming. The door swung open, not with a crash, but with a soft, quiet push. Standing in the doorway was not a security guard or a police officer. It was a woman, tall and elegant, dressed in a sharp, dark suit. Her expression was calm, her eyes intelligent, and she looked directly at me. "Charlotte Wright," she said, her voice smooth and even. "I was hoping you'd be the one to finally open this box." Leo stepped forward. "Who are you? How do you know who we are?" he demanded, his voice low and protective. The woman didn't even flinch. She simply held up her phone, showing the text message she had sent me the night before. "I'm the third party," she said simply. "My name is Evelyn Reed. And I'm the one who sent you the warning." My mind was spinning. The photo of the baby was still clutched in my hand, a secret that had just been born into my world. "How?" I stammered. "How do you know about this?" "Because it's my job to know," Evelyn said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind her. "I'm a private investigator. I was hired 6 months ago by Eleanor Sterling, Preston's mother. She never trusted your father. She felt that he was a wolf in sheep's clothing, and she wanted me to find out why he was so desperate to marry his daughter into their family. So Preston's mother had her own suspicions. The perfect fairy tale was rotten from the inside out. My poor sister was walking into a nest of vipers, completely unaware. "Then you know about this," I said, holding up the medical file. "You know he's blackmailing them." Evelyn nodded grimly. "I do. But I found something else too. Something your father has kept hidden for nearly 2 years." Her eyes flickered down to the photograph in my hand. "I see you've found her. Your sister." The word felt foreign, impossible. Sister. A whole other life my father had created, built on a foundation of even more lies. My own family wasn't just broken. It was a complete fraud. "Who is her mother?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Evelyn looked at me with something like pity. "A young paralegal who used to work at his office. He made her promises, of course. Told her he would leave your mother. When she got pregnant, he panicked. He fired her and has been paying her to stay silent ever since, using the money from this very box." She gestured to the safety deposit box on the table. "So that's where my dreams had been going. To pay for my father's silence, to cover up a life he had destroyed." Leo, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke. "The money," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Our money." He reached into the box, past the envelopes, and his face fell. He pulled out several bundles of cash, held together with rubber bands, and a stack of bearer bonds. But it was nowhere near the amount he had described. "He's been draining it," Leo said, his voice hollow with defeat. "He's been stealing from us all over again for years. My father wasn't just saving this money. He was using it as his personal secret piggy bank." "He is," Evelyn confirmed. "He makes a withdrawal every month to pay for his secret family's expenses. And he's planning to make his biggest withdrawal yet in 2 days, right before the wedding rehearsal dinner. It's a final payoff to the mother, to ensure she disappears for good after the wedding solidifies his connection to the Sterlings. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. He was going to use the last of the money he stole from us to erase a woman and child he brought into the world." A new fire ignited inside me, hotter than anger, stronger than sadness. It was the fire of pure, cold justice. "We're going to stop him," I said, looking from Leo to Evelyn. "We have to." Evelyn gave a small, approving smile. "That's why I'm here." My client, Mrs. Sterling, wants this to end. She wants to protect her son and get your father out of their lives forever. Our goals are the same. She reached into her bag and pulled out something small, no bigger than a button. It was a listening device. He's expecting you to be weak, Charlotte, Evelyn said, her voice firm. He thinks you're a sad little girl crying over her college fund. That is your greatest advantage. You need to confront him at the rehearsal dinner tomorrow night. You will wear this, and you will get him to confess to everything. The blackmail, the theft, the secret family. We'll have everything we need to destroy him. The thought of facing my father, of deliberately walking into a confrontation with that monster, made me feel sick. But what choice did I have? This was my one shot. I'll do it, I said, my voice shaking but my resolve solid. I would do it for me, for Leo, for the sister I never knew, and even for Bethany, who was being used as a pawn in this horrible game. Evelyn handed me the device. Good, she said. Then she paused, her expression turning deadly serious, her eyes locking onto mine. But before you go in there, there's one last thing you need to know. Don't be fooled by your mother's tears or her polite smiles. She isn't his victim. She's his willing partner. She knows everything. Evelyn's words hung in the air, heavier than any secret I had discovered so far. She knows everything. My mother. The woman who baked me cookies when I was sad, who held my hand at the doctor's office, who told me I could be anything I wanted to be. It was all a lie. The memory of her smiling at that diamond necklace flashed in my mind, but this time it was different. It wasn't just a moment of selfishness. It was a victory smile. It was the smile of a person who had won, who had gotten everything she wanted, and didn't care who she had to step on to get it. No, I whispered, shaking my head. It was a weak, pathetic sound. She cried with me. She told me they would pay me back. Why would she do that? Evelyn's eyes were cold, not with cruelty, but with facts. Because she is a performer, Charlotte. Your mother's greatest fear isn't losing you. It's losing this life. The country club, the designer clothes, the respect that comes with a right name. Bethany marrying a Sterling is the biggest prize of her life. Your college fund was just a small price to pay to secure that. Everything started to click into place, all the little moments that never made sense before. The way my mother would always steer conversations away from my school success at family dinners. The way she'd tell me my dream of being a vet was a messy, difficult job, while praising Bethany for wanting to be an event planner. She wasn't just favoring my sister. She was actively trying to keep me small, to keep me from outshining the daughter who was her ticket to a higher social status. My father was the villain who held the knife, but my mother was the one who held me down. Leo placed a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm. I saw it years ago, Charlie, he said, his voice full of old pain. When your father turned on me, she just stood there. She didn't ask questions. She didn't defend me. He just chose him. He chose the money. She has always chosen the money. Hearing it from him, the first victim of their cruelty, made it undeniably real. I was living the same betrayal he had, just 20 years later. We weren't just an uncle and a niece. We were survivors of the same shipwreck. This changes the plan, Evelyn said, her voice pulling me back to the cold reality of the room. You can't just go after your father. You have to be aware of your mother at all times. She will try to stop you. She will use guilt, tears, anything she can to protect him and their perfect world. You cannot fall for it. You have to be stronger than she is. How could I be strong against the woman who taught me how to be strong? The woman whose approval I had craved my entire life. That night, as I drove back to my small apartment, the world felt gray and colorless. It felt like an orphan. My father was a monster, and my mother was his keeper. The family I thought I had was a ghost, a story I had told myself to feel safe. Now I was truly alone. But as I parked my car, I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red from crying, but underneath the sadness, a flicker of something new was starting to burn. It was the same fire I saw in Leo's eyes. It was the same steely resolve I saw in Evelyn's. I spent the next day preparing for war. I went through my closet, looking for my armor. I didn't choose a fancy dress. I chose a simple dark pantsuit. It was professional, serious. It was the outfit of a woman who was there for business, not for a party. I practiced what I was going to say in front of the mirror, my voice shaking at first, then growing stronger with each repetition. I wasn't just fighting for my money anymore. I was fighting for the little girl who believed her mother's promises. Evelyn met me an hour before the dinner. She helped me tape the tiny listening device to the inside of my jacket. It was cold against my skin. "Remember," she said, her hands on my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. "He is arrogant. His pride is his weakness. Make him feel powerful, then make him brag. Talk about how clever he was to secure this deal with the Sterlings. Ask him how he managed to keep all his secrets safe for so long. It was a brilliant strategy, using his own ego as the bait in our trap." As I drove to the fancy restaurant where the rehearsal dinner was being held, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Bethany. "Where are you? You're going to be late. Mom is already freaking out." For a second I felt a pang of guilt. My sister was innocent in all of this. She was just another pawn. But then I remembered the Sterling medical file. My father was letting her marry into a family with a violent, unstable secret. Protecting her meant I had to hurt her first. It was a terrible, impossible choice. I pulled up to the restaurant and could see them all through the large glass window. The Sterlings, my parents, my sister, all laughing and drinking champagne. They looked like a perfect family in a perfect world. I took a deep breath, my hand on the cold brass handle of the restaurant door. I could feel the cold weight of the wire against my chest. My father, the monster. And my mother, the woman who helped him create me, and then chose to destroy me. I pushed the door open and walked in, a polite smile fixed on my face. The performance of my life was about to begin. The moment I stepped into the private dining room, a wave of false happiness washed over me. Laughter bounced off the crystal glasses, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and roasted duck. Everyone turned to look at me, and for a second the room fell silent. My mother, Eleanor, was at my side in an instant, her fingers digging into my arm like talons. Her smile was wide and bright, but her eyes were cold and angry. "Charlotte, darling. So glad you could finally make it," she hissed, her voice a low whisper only I could hear. "You nearly gave me a heart attack." I didn't pull away. I simply smiled back, a sweet, apologetic smile I had practiced in the mirror. "I'm so sorry, Mom. My car wouldn't start. You know how it is." I let my voice sound a little helpless, a little pathetic. It was the version of me she was comfortable with. Her grip loosened slightly. I moved past her, toward the center of the room where Bethany was showing off her engagement ring to Mrs. Sterling. "Bethany, congratulations," I said, my voice full of fake excitement. "Everything looks absolutely perfect. You deserve all of this." My father watched me from across the room. His eyes narrowed, trying to read me. He was a predator, sensing a change in the wind. I ignored him, keeping my focus on the happy couple, playing the part of the slightly jealous but ultimately supportive younger sister. I chatted with Preston, I admired the flower arrangements, I did everything a normal person would do. My parents' confusion was obvious. They had expected a storm, but I was giving them a calm, sunny day. This was my advantage. They thought I was weak, and I was going to let them believe it. After about 20 minutes I saw my chance. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling pulled Bethany aside to discuss something about the guest list. My father was standing alone by the balcony doors, a glass of whiskey in his hand. I walked over to him, my heart pounding against the tiny microphone taped to my chest. "Dad," I said softly. He turned, his expression unreadable. I was hoping we could talk for a second, just to clear the air. He raised an eyebrow, suspicious. "I feel terrible about how I've been acting," I continued, looking down at my shoes. "I just want to understand." He led me out onto the balcony. The cool night air was a relief after the stuffy room. The city lights twinkled below us. For a moment we just stood there in silence. Then I began. "Dad," I started, my voice full of fake admiration. "I've been thinking. I was so angry about my college fund, but now, I think I'm starting to see the bigger picture. What you've done for this family, for Bethany. It's incredible. It's genius, really." His posture changed. He stood up a little straighter. The bait was working. "It's just business, Charlotte," he said, trying to sound modest, but I could hear the pride in his voice. "Sometimes you have to make hard choices for the greater good." I nodded, pretending to finally understand his wisdom. "But how did you do it?" I asked, my voice a conspiratorial whisper. "The Sterlings are. Well, they're the Sterlings. They're on another level. How did you convince them that our family was the right fit for theirs?" I held my breath, praying he would take the bait and brag. He chuckled, a low, arrogant sound. He took a sip of his whiskey. "Let's just say I knew something about Mr. Sterling that made our families a perfect match. I knew about a weakness he has, a problem from his past. I simply made him an offer he couldn't refuse. I provided a solution. This wedding is that solution. It makes everyone's problems go away." He had just confessed. He had confessed to blackmail, and the tiny device under my jacket was recording every single word. Had him. Just as I was about to push him for more, to ask about Uncle Leo, the balcony door slid open. It was my mother. "Richard, what are you two whispering about out here? Charlotte, stop bothering your father." Her eyes darted between us, full of suspicion. "It's all right, Eleanor," my father said, waving her away with his hand. "Charlotte is finally starting to understand how the real world works." He turned back to me, his ego now fully inflated. "Like I was saying, you have to be ruthless. Look at your Uncle Leo. He was weak. He couldn't make the hard choices, so I had to make them for him. And the money." I pushed, my voice trembling slightly. "That secret account was your insurance, wasn't it?" He smiled, a truly chilling sight. "Insurance for everything. For a rainy day, for new opportunities. And for other obligations that a man in my position has." He was admitting to everything. The theft from Leo, the secret spending. Evelyn would have it all. He opened his mouth to say more, to explain what those other obligations were, but he never got the chance. The balcony door slid open again. This time it was Bethany, and she did not look happy. "Dad, Mom, what is going on?" she asked, her eyes filled with confusion. "Everyone inside is staring out here." But she wasn't the only one who had followed us. Right behind her stood Preston Sterling, and his father, Mr. Sterling Sr. His face was not happy. It was pale and filled with a rage so intense it felt like the air was turning to ice. He was holding a large manila envelope in his hand. He looked past me, past his son, and stared directly at my father. "Richard," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "My wife just had this delivered to our table. I think you and I need to have a little chat. Right now." My father stared at the envelope in Mr. Sterling's hand, his face turning the color of ash. He looked like a cornered animal. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, his voice losing all its power. But Mr. Sterling was no longer a man being blackmailed. He was a lion who had been let out of his cage. He ripped open the envelope and threw a stack of photographs onto the table between them. They were the pictures I had taken in my father's office. The picture of the settlement that destroyed Leo's life. "You are a snake, Richard," Mr. Sterling said, his voice dangerously low. "And I do not do business with snakes." My mother rushed forward, her hands fluttering in the air. "There must be a mistake. This is Charlotte's doing. She's always been jealous of Bethany," she cried, trying to create chaos, to create a story that would save them. But no one was listening. Bethany was staring at the photos on the table, then at her father, then at our mother. The perfect, happy mask she had worn her whole life was cracking, and for the first time I saw my real sister, scared and lost. The tears welling in her eyes weren't for her wedding anymore. They were for her entire life, which she was realizing was a lie. This was my moment. The reason I was here. I stepped forward from the shadows of the balcony, my voice clear and steady. It wasn't just him, Mr. Sterling. She was his partner. I looked directly at my mother, whose face crumpled in shock. Then I reached into my jacket and pulled the tiny microphone from its tape, holding it up for everyone to see. He confessed to everything. Blackmail. A theft. He confessed to destroying his own brother to save his pride. And I have it all on tape. My father looked at the tiny device as if it were a bomb. In that moment, he knew he was completely and utterly finished. The wedding, of course, was over. Mr. Sterling took his family and left without another word, leaving a trail of broken dreams behind them. But I wasn't done. I looked at Bethany, whose tears were now flowing freely. "He used my college fund to pay for all of this, Beth," I said gently. "This whole wedding was a lie to cover up a rich man's secret." Then I turned to my mother, the architect of our family's pain. I pulled out the last secret, the photo of the baby girl. "And while you were smiling about your diamond necklace, he was using the rest of our money to pay for his other family. For my sister. Our sister." The silence that followed was the sound of a world ending. Bethany let out a sob, a heartbroken sound that I will never forget. She didn't look at our father. She looked at our mother. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew all of this and you let me. You let him." She couldn't finish the sentence. She just shook her head, turned, and walked out of the restaurant, leaving our parents standing alone amidst the ruins of their perfect life. They didn't even look at each other. They had nothing left to protect. That was 6 months ago. Today, the sun is shining through the window of my small apartment, falling on the pages of a veterinary medicine textbook. I'm in my first semester. It's harder than I ever imagined, but every single day, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. With Evelyn's help, we recovered what was left of the money. I took my share for school and I gave the rest to Leo. He used it to start a new, small construction company, an honest one this time. He's finally getting his life back. As for my parents, they lost everything. The Sterlings made sure the truth came out, quietly but effectively. My parents are social pariahs now, trapped in their big, empty house with nothing but their lies to keep them company. Bethany left that night and never went back. She calls me sometimes. We're taking it slow, learning who we are without our parents' shadows hanging over us. We're trying to build something real, something honest. It's not easy, but for the first time it feels like we have a chance. Last week I did the hardest thing of all. I drove to a small house in a quiet neighborhood and met a little girl named Lily. She has my father's eyes. Her mother was just another person my father lied to, and she was so relieved that the truth was finally out. Lily is my sister. Looking at her, I don't feel anger anymore. I just feel a deep need to protect her, to make sure her life is better than the one we had. We are building a new family now, one born from the ashes of betrayal, but built on a foundation of truth. This journey has been the most painful thing I have ever gone through. But it taught me that your real family isn't always the one you're born into. It's the people who stand by you, who fight for you, and who love you for who you are, not for what you can do for them. My story is about the incredible pain of betrayal, but it's also about the strength you can find when you have nothing left to lose. It's about finding your voice and speaking your truth, even when it shakes. If my story has touched you, if you have ever felt unheard or wronged, please, take a second to press that like button. Helps my story reach others who might need to hear it. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that they are strong enough to fight back. And please consider subscribing to my channel. Every subscription feels like a new member of our true family, a family built on support and kindness. Your support means more to me than words can say. Thank you for listening.